Afternoon, everyone. Those tuned in from all over the world, Canada, the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm your host, Dr. Camille Cummings, and welcome to Voice of Men 360's monthly webinar. Before I introduce you to our host, I would like us to read a disclaimer. Voice of Men 360's disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have questions or concerns about today's episode or any of Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. So I want to introduce our host today. She is Kateri Coyhis of the Mohican Nation, and she is the Executive Director of White Bison in Colorado Springs, Colorado. White Bison is an American Indian nonprofit corporation dedicated to creating and sustaining a grassroots Wellbriety movement that provides culturally based healing to the next 7 generations of Indigenous people. Kateri serves the Wellbriety movement by providing community presentations to bring awareness to the programs White Bison offers for individual, family, and community healing. She has been providing training, delivering a variety of presentations, and offering technical assistance for over 20 years. She is also a board member for Faces and Voices of Recovery and the National Association for Children of Addiction. Kateri is co-author for a chapter in Radical Psychology, Multicultural and Social Justice Decolonization Initiatives 2018. And Kateri received her Master's of Public Administration from the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. So with that being said, I welcome Kateri as our guest. I'm your host, Dr. Camille Cummings, International Domestic Violence Advocate, Voice of Men 360, and of course, our CEO, Sivam Vilatham, Voice of Men 360 is also here with us. So welcome, Kateri.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world today. Kulamalsi, Kateri Coyhis, and Denuete, Nia, my ekanu. Hello, my name is Kateri Coyhis. I am an enrolled member of the Mohican Nation, which my family is located at the Stockbridge Munsee Reservation in Wisconsin. First and foremost, I am a person in long-term recovery. And so for me, that means that I have not used alcohol or drugs since April of 2012. So this past April, I was just able to share, to celebrate my 10 years of continuous sobriety for the first time. Kulamalsi, Kateri Coyhis and Denuete, Nia Ma Ekanu. Hello, my name is Kateri Coyhis. I'm from the Mohican Nation, and I just gave you a greeting in my traditional language. My family is from the Stockbridge Munsee Reservation in Wisconsin, but I am coming to you today from Colorado Springs, which is my hometown and headquarters of White Bison here in Colorado Springs. First and foremost, I am a person in long-term recovery, and for me, that means I haven't used alcohol or drugs since April 7th, 2012. So this past April, I just got to celebrate 10 years of continuous Wellbriety. And because of my recovery, I also currently get to serve as the executive director for White Bison here in Colorado Springs, which is the organization that saved my life. And because of my recovery, I also get to be a mother of 2 beautiful children who, is present for my children. I have a beautiful 8-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And I get to have a partner, with me to walk this life's journey with in my family. So White Bison was founded in 1988, and our mission is to create a sustainable grassroots Wellbriety movement that provides culturally based healing for the next 7 generations of Indigenous people. And so, for anybody who might not be familiar with what Wellbriety is, it means living a sober lifestyle that is balanced emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's about whole person wellness. And so, the analogy that we like to give is, let's just say that you have a jerk and he's drinking, and all he does is quit drinking. Well, he's sober, but he's still a jerk. So, we have to focus on that whole person wellness. Wellbriety is something that looks at healing individuals, families, communities, and nations. It's about being connected to the traditional principles, values, and natural laws that help guide the Wellbriety programs. These are teachings that we got from elders that have been passed down. It's about walking the red road. It's about what we call creating a healing forest. And it's really important to know that Wellbriety is all inclusive. So, what that means is we get a lot of our teachings from nature, right? So there's trees, there's different colored trees. There's flowers, there's different color flowers. There's humans, there's different color humans. And all you see here, this is just an earth suit. So we all have different earth suits, and there is only one race, and that's the human race. So we do take a culturally based approach, but if this path happens to work for you, then we welcome everyone to sit in the circle. I like to give a little bit of background about how I got introduced and involved in the Wellbriety movement. And in all reality, I grew up around the Wellbriety movement since I was a kid. But when I really started to get involved is when I was 16 years old. And we took this sacred hoop of 100 eagle feathers across the United States. We walked from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and the purpose of this journey was to help raise awareness for domestic violence on women and children. When I got to LA, I was 2 days sober and going through withdrawals from meth. I had been using meth and alcohol and various other drugs for the past year before that. And when I got there, I was 2 days sober and I didn't tell anybody about it. So I was actually detoxing in secret. And so we spent 3.5 months walking across the United States, where we held 10 different conferences along the way on issues like domestic violence and teen suicides and FAS and Native American boarding schools and all these different issues. But we carried this sacred hoop with us across the United States, and this hoop has become a symbol of the Wellbriety movement. And so in our culture, an eagle is very sacred because it's the highest flying bird in the sky. And we believe that it helps with taking our prayers up to the Creator. So one eagle feather is very sacred. This hoop actually has 100 on it. And this hoop was born from a vision. And in this vision, there was this light, this beam of light that came down from the ground to the sky. And in this beam of light, this tree started to grow. And it went through all 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter. And once it got to winter and all the leaves fell off, the branches fell off, and it came and it turned horizontal like this, and it bent itself up into a circle. And then a dot of light came from the east, and it came down and it dipped towards the ground and attached itself to that hoop as an eagle feather. And then it did it in the south and the west and the north until there was 100 feathers on this hoop. And so the man who had the vision took this vision to some elders in South Dakota, and they sat him down and they said, "Tell us the story of your whole life." And so he talked for a long time, and he sat there and told them the whole story. And at the end, they said, "Well, we think that you need to build this hoop. So do you have any questions?" And he said, "Yeah, I have one." He says, "Where am I going to get 100 eagle feathers? You can't just go on Google or go to Walmart and buy these eagle feathers, right?" And they said, "Don't worry, they'll come to you." And so what he did is he just kind of forgot about it. And one day he was walking around downtown here in Colorado Springs, and he walked past this other Native man. And all of a sudden he turns around and he says, "Hey, wait." He goes, "I don't know why, but I feel like I need to give you this." And so he reached into his pouch and he pulled out this eagle feather. And so without advertising or telling anybody about this vision, all these feathers started to come in from all over the world. And one day they suddenly stopped. And so the staff here said, well, something's wrong. We haven't been getting any feathers for a long time. So they laid them out on the table and they counted them, and there was exactly 100 feathers. And so they went to the mountains here in Colorado and they built this hoop in a sweat lodge. What we did is we actually had a gathering of multicultural elders from the 4 directions: red, yellow, black, and white. There were 27 indigenous nations represented. There was a tribe that came from Africa to bring the water ceremonies. There were Tibetan monks, one of which was the teacher of the Dalai Lama. And there was a tribe from Finland called the Sami people. And they represented the white direction. And so what they did is during this ceremony, they put 4 gifts into this hoop. And those gifts were the power of hope, healing, unity, and the powers to forgive even the unforgivable. And so everywhere that this hoop has gone, it has gone on several journeys across the country. It has been up into Canada. It has been up into Alaska. The first journey that we did was in 1999, where we focused on the tribal colleges and bringing awareness to a program that we have called the Medicine Wheel in 12 Steps. Then we took a walk across the United States, and we called that journey the Wiping of the Tears. That highlighted bringing awareness for domestic violence on women and children. And then we went on another journey to focus on specifically the healing of women and children, and that was west of the Mississippi. And then we went on a journey that focused on the healing of men and children, and that was east of the Mississippi. But this hoop has traveled over 200,000 miles, and what we were told is that whenever this hoop gets requested, we were to take it to the people. This is the people's hoop. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to everybody. We're just the keepers of it. And so what we committed to do was to carry this message wherever the hoop went. And the first message is that the healing time is here, that recovery is possible, that the solution is actually from within the community, that our elders' teachings are coming back, and that we have to understand the connection between past, present, and future, and that the Wellbriety movement is here. And so these teachings that we were given, we get all of our teachings from nature, right? So there's a physical world that you can see, and there's a spiritual world that you cannot see, and that they're interconnected. And so this was the source of our native culture. And so a long time ago, what we had is communities that looked like this. So our kids, they grew up to be healthy warriors. They grew up to be traditional healthy women, traditional healthy men. And then our men and women grew up to be our elders. And so what we found is that traditionally our communities, they had these principles, laws, and values, and they were grounded in healing and spirituality and ceremonies and cultural values and the language and interconnectedness with each other. Then something happened to us, and it took us from a community that looks like this to a community that looks like this. And instead of being grounded in that interconnectedness and those cultural values, we were grounded in anger and guilt and shame and fear. And so what we found is that our kids, some of them started to go into the prison system. And then some of them went into treatment. Some of them started going into the court system. And then unfortunately, we lost a lot of our people into the spirit world due to overdoses or homicides or violence. And so what did it take to destroy our communities? Because the world in which you live, you did not create. It was created for you. And so I want to show this little video to give an idea about what happened to our community.
A long time ago, before you were born, the old people told a story about a visit from the wisdom keepers. The wisdom keepers told us the light skins are coming. Their numbers would be great. They will bring great destruction and confusion. That we will go through a time of testing. They will bring 4 mind changers to make us forget our ways. The mind changers would be a liquid, a black book, a song, and a card. They will take your land. They will poison the earth. They will bring disease and sickness. They will kill the women and the children. They will destroy our culture. Only our spirituality will be left. After the testing time, a great healing will take place. The eagles will come back. The buffalo will come back. We will come back. The prophecies will come true. We are now in a time of the fulfillment of prophecy. The story that happened has never been told. Now is the time to tell the story.
In 2008, a gathering took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The purpose of this gathering was to talk about intergenerational trauma. The pain and hurt at this conference was so intense that the elders instructed us to make a 7,000-mile journey across the United States. We traveled to current and former boarding schools to gather these stories from the people who attended when they were children. We recorded the stories of what happened to them.
The stories that we heard on this journey from these elders were so unbelievable. Some of the elders, they even had a very difficult time even talking about what went on there. Many of the elders who told us stories of what happened to them was the first time that they ever told a story to anybody, even their children, their spouses. No one had known the experiences that they had in these boarding schools as children.
Because this happened over 100 years ago, 130 years ago, and that historical trauma passes on from generation to generation. And we see many angry young people and others who don't even know why they're angry.
Denial can't remove the consequences of the choices in life that brought you here.
So they pulled our pants down, and that was our first whipping. And the first day I got there, the first night,
whipped me all over my damn body.
We need to go back and honor those people and say sorry, because they really did suffer and starve.
Before she went to bed, she would always hear screams from the boys' side of the boarding school.
And yes, there was sexual abuse in our time. Yes, there was. But we weren't allowed to talk about it.
Thinking about all of the children, thousands and thousands of children, maybe over 100 years, that were taken from people they knew and loved, torn away and taken to a place they didn't know or understand.
But today I can just say that they brutally raped me over and over, one by one.
You can't decide to win or lose. There is a road inside.
This isn't history. I mean, it's still with us. What has happened in the past will never leave us.
What you do, whether you win or if you lose, there is a road.
Where is our Schindler's List? Where is our Anne Frank? To be able to leverage that knowingness and insight, to have everybody to be held responsible for knowing this part of history, not for blame, victimization, or guilt, but simply to know.
Inside of you.
Why did we make this documentary? One is we want the world to know the story of the genocide of Native Americans. We also want the world to know the truth of what happened in the boarding schools. In order for us to heal from the intergenerational trauma, we choose to forgive.
So that clip was from a documentary that we created called the Wellbriety Movement Journey of Forgiveness, which is available for free on YouTube, or people can get free copies if they reach out to our office. But we went on this journey in 2009, and the goal was twofold. We wanted to give survivors an opportunity to tell their story, sometimes for the first time in their whole life. And two, we wanted to spread the message of forgiveness and healing in our communities. And so in 1879, this is the beginning of the Native American boarding schools in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And it was the first model school for the nearly 500 schools that were set up in the United States with the goal of assimilating Indigenous children into mainstream society. And a lot of the stories there, as you saw from that clip, a lot of the kids that attended these schools experienced sexual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. And so you can imagine there's this whole generation of kids, young kids as old as 4 or 5 years old, that they got taken from their families, because a long time ago, Indigenous people were very, very good at raising families and very, very good at different types of education. They taught their children botany and geometry and astrology and all of these different things, but it wasn't done, in a westernized model. And they were very good at raising their families. But you imagine that they're taken from their families. They're forbidden to speak their native language, which is all they knew. Their hair was cut. They were given English names. They were forced to learn English. They were forced to learn Christianity. And then they would learn vocational skills, cooking, sewing, baking, etc. But there's this whole generation of kids that grew up in this way with all this violence and abuse. That's all that they knew or understood. And so they actually passed that to their children, who then passed that on to their children. And what it did is it created this legacy of what we call intergenerational and historical trauma. So what does that mean? It's a combination of immense losses and traumatic events that are perpetrated upon an entire culture. So for Indigenous communities, these losses included culture and language and land, our people due to diseases and war, our way of life, our spirituality, our family structure. So common findings from studies on people who are from traumatized cultures on intergenerational and historical trauma, these are how they coped with their experiences. A lot of them would have an impulse to protect their children from the horror. So they would become silent and never talk about what happened. And I have to issue a trigger warning here because some of these stories are really hard to hear. And so the story goes, there was this grandma that we encountered on the journey, and her grandbaby came home. Grandma, 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 guess what I learned? And that grandbaby spoke their traditional language. And she reached up and smacked that grandbaby across the face. And that grandbaby stared at her in horror. Well, the reason that she did that is because when she was a kid, she attended a boarding school and she had 3 fingers on her. And every time that she spoke her language, they chopped off one of her fingers. And so she had that impulse to protect her grandbaby because she didn't want that grandbaby to experience the same thing that she experienced. There's a lack of trust, so they don't look for attachments. They have difficulty in relationships. They have a tendency to reject their own background and identify as something else, as a form of protection, because to identify as native was actually very dangerous. Some have the tendency to fight back and protest. Some people believe that feeling numb, being angry, acting self-destructively, and feeling homeless was a normal way to be in the world. That's how they grew up. It was normal to them. And so what happens is this trauma was actually passed down through direct parent-child interactions and through interactions with the extended family and the community. There is scientific evidence now that has found that when trauma is introduced into the system, it literally changes the epigenetic discourse of the DNA. And so it is literally handed down from generation to generation through the DNA. And so what complicates the healing process? Some people have an inability to mourn because they didn't know what happened to their family or loved ones due to relocations or family separation. A lack of political power, feeling like they're unable to change things, so why bother? No sense of hope for the future. And then some people there was a lack of acknowledgement of this trauma by the dominant culture, so that only fueled their feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. And so these are the ways that we know about intergenerational and historical trauma. It's not just from Indigenous communities, but it's from research on Holocaust survivors, from the Japanese American internment camps, from slavery, from even today, the Central and North American refugees that are being separated at the border, and then more recent studies on Indigenous people. And so what we know is that intergenerational trauma exists in the 4 directions: red, yellow, black, and white. And so consider this for the moment. Everything that we're experiencing today is the result of 7 generations ago. And everything that we are doing today is going to impact the next 7 generations from now. And so remember how we talked about how there's a spiritual world that you cannot see? So when this trauma was introduced, what happened is it started to manifest into the physical world, into the issues that we see in our communities today: substance use, unhealthy relationships, sexual abuse, family violence. And so what we've been doing is we've been looking at treating these symptoms. Alcohol, substance use, these are not the causes, these are the symptoms. And so what we found is that the cause is this intergenerational and historical trauma. So we have to understand the connection between trauma, current social issues, and family healing. So this is our current condition today. This is what we see in our communities. And it's a lot more than just alcohol. When we very first started this organization, we were focusing on alcohol. It's so much more than that now, that issues that people are dealing with in our communities. So this is our current condition, and what I want to know from you today is it possible to change this? Is it possible to go from a community that looks like this back to a community that looks like this, where we're grounded in healing and spirituality, commitment, we have acceptance, we have interconnectedness, we have hope, we have encouragement, we have understanding of each other? And so I'm here to tell you today that there is hope. And so what we would like to introduce is what this change formula, where A plus B plus C equals willingness to change, where A is the vision, B is a dissatisfaction with the old, and C is practical first steps. Because we can't keep doing what we're doing and saying what we're saying and expect different results. And so what I want to know today is, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? And if you are, we have a model that can help introduce individual, community, and family change. And so this process for implementing change is called the 4 laws of change. The first law says changes from within. The second law says in order for development to occur, it must be preceded by a vision. The third law says a great learning must occur. And the fourth law says you must create a healing forest. So the first law changes from within. It says all permanent and lasting change. And I'm going to say it again. All permanent and lasting change. All permanent and lasting change starts on the inside and then works its way out. Change starts from within first. You can't force anybody to change who's not ready. And so what we found, we get our teachings from nature. And so the salmon is born with a blueprint inside. Inside every creature is the innate knowledge of how to conduct itself, the innate knowledge of its own well-being. And the salmon have this blueprint inside, and they know what to do to be a good, healthy salmon. And then we have the bear. The bear is born with a blueprint inside. It knows what to do. It knows how to be a good, healthy bear. Well, human beings were not left out. So inside every human being is the innate knowledge of our own well-being. And the second law says in order for development to occur, it must be preceded by a vision. So what kind of a vision are you holding today? The teaching says you move toward and become like that which you think about. So isn't it important then to be thinking about what it is that you're thinking about? What kind of a vision are you holding today? Is it for healthy families, healthy men, healthy youth, healthy leadership, culture, spirituality? What is in your vision today? Because you move towards and become like that which you think about. The third law says a great learning must occur, and that takes place throughout the whole spectrum of the cycle of life. Baby, youth, adult, elder. It includes everybody. And it starts with individuals because change is from within, and then change moves into the family, the community, and then the nation. This fourth law says you must create a healing forest. And so let's just say that you have this really sick forest, right? All these diseases and different issues, and you take one tree out of that forest and you take that tree to treatment, or you take that tree to a nursery and you give it all the healthy sunshine and nutrients and all these things, teachings that it needs to be a good, healthy tree. And then that tree gets out of treatment and it goes back to the sick forest. What do you think will happen to that tree? That tree will get sick again. So we have to look at healing everybody in the forest, right? So this is what we call our healing forest model. And this is a model for how to create change by setting a vision to go back to healthy families, healthy relationships, healthy children, healthy men, healthy leadership, healthy communities. So now what do we do with that information? What we're trying to do through our programs is called creating intergenerational healing. And what that means is it's a combination of immense healing, community training, and a return to the cultural ways of our people by bringing back culture and stories and spirituality and language, rebuilding the family structure, restoring balance emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So some of the pathways to healing from intergenerational trauma and creating that intergenerational healing instead is that we have to heal ourselves first, right? Change starts from within. We have to facilitate recovery efforts everywhere. Create healing spaces in your own communities, addressing issues around shame. I don't know if you're anything like me, but as a person in recovery, when I was in my active addiction, I did some things I was pretty shamed about. And so we have to address those issues around shame. Restoring pride in our own cultural heritage and identity, whatever that looks like. Practicing forgiveness, including everyone in the healing process, because we have to help create that healing forest. And then implementing culturally based approaches at all levels of healing. And so White Bison was founded in 1988, but in 1998, the Wellbriety movement was introduced. And so we have these different webs. And what this Wellbriety movement means is it's a live force consisting of large numbers of people who are interconnected with a focus of wellness. We have one message of wellness, but it's carried by many, many different messengers because we're in a time of healing. And so what that looks like is, it looks like family services, mental health, treatment, schools, the community, peer recovery support, church and spiritual support, law enforcement, our friends and family, because it truly does take an entire village. One message carried by many different messengers, and we have to bring everybody to the circle because the opposite of addiction is connection. And so as a community, we have to learn how to heal together. And how we do that is through getting everybody working toward the same vision. And part of that process of change, right? We have to set that vision, motivating people to participate, developing skills and knowledge through training and education, reclaiming and implementing cultural values and traditions, and creating a supportive environment to sustain the changes. We have to do that together because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's a healing approach. And I want to share this quick story with you. We're storytellers in our Indigenous communities. And so this story is about the three sisters, and it's an elder's approach to community healing. So there were these three sisters, and they were walking down the river, and what they heard is, they heard this noise, and they saw these babies in the river, and they were floating down, and they were losing all these babies. And so the first sister, what she did is she jumped into this river, and she started taking these babies and rescuing them and throwing them on the shore. She stared at the second sister who was just sort of watching, right? And she yelled, "Get in here and help." And so the second sister realized she couldn't save all of the babies, right? And so she jumped into the water and she started to teach these babies how to swim. She started training them. And so then the third sister was standing there and they yelled at her, "Get in here and help." And so she stood there for a second and they yelled at her again, "Get in here and help." And she actually took off running upriver. And so what she wanted to do was she wanted to find out, why were these babies coming down the river in the first place? And so one was rescuing, one was, training, one was looking at preventing. And so what we say is that we need everybody, right? We need the people to still save our community members. We need them to be rescued. We need training. We need some of them to go to treatment so that they know how to get those tools to heal themselves. And then we also need to focus on prevention. And what we found, when we put the culture upriver, we have less babies coming down the river. So it's going to take everybody. And so what we believe is that the solution resides within each community. This is not something that's going to be driven from the leadership in most cases, but it's going to be coming from the community. It's up to the community to help bring in those tools and training, set that vision to heal. We believe in interconnectedness, that it's going to take everyone. We believe that a healing will take place through an application of cultural and spiritual knowledge. We believe that the healing of our communities is entirely possible. And we believe that it will be generated from the grassroots up, from our peers. It will be peer-led efforts. And we hope that our leadership gets involved. But we know that we need people to drive. And it's going to take everybody from all walks of life, people from many, many different earth suits. Red, yellow, black, white, mixed, it doesn't matter. And I like this quote because it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And so from that, all of our programs are grassroots driven. All of our programs are peer led. They're being led by people who have been there, people who have lived experience, whether it's through themselves, through a friend, a family member. All of our programs are based on traditional teachings and values. All of our programs are culturally relevant. And all of our programs are easily adapted to fit unique cultural needs. We have 572 federally recognized tribes in the country. And what we've found is that each one is different. They have different language, different ceremony. And so what we are able to do is provide a framework, provide a core set of universal human teachings, traditional knowledge, universal laws and values. And what we do is we say, here's the template. Now you go back to your community and you make it your own. I've had some people go, well, I didn't grow up around my culture, so, how do I do that? And so what we let people know is that there's a lot of different kinds of culture, right? There's the culture of our ancestors. There's the culture of where we come from. There's recovery culture. There's work culture, right? And so culture is a shared meaning, shared values, traditions, language, customs, arts, symbols, histories, stories, shared relationships, ancestors, or behaviors. Culture can mean many, many different. So you got to find out, what does that mean for you? And so I'd like to just offer a quick overview of the programs that we have available. So we have programs that are especially for men in recovery called our Medicine Wheel and 12 Steps for Men. We have a Medicine Wheel and 12 Steps for Women. They're culturally based 12-step programs. And then we have youth prevention programs called Daughters of Tradition and Sons of Tradition. We have a youth treatment and recovery program called the Medicine Wheel and 12 Steps for Youth. And then we have programs for healthy parenting, Mothers of Tradition and Fathers of Tradition. We have a program that is designed for whole family wellness. And what we did is we actually partnered with the National Association for Children of Addiction, and we took their evidence-based program called Celebrating Families, and they allowed us to develop a cultural overlay, make it applicable to Indigenous communities. We have a program that focuses on healing from grief and trauma called Mending Broken Hearts. And then we have a program for re-entry, and it's also a recovery coach program. So people coming out of incarceration or treatment back into the community, and then training people how to be peer recovery coaches. We have a program called Understanding the Purpose of Life. And what it does is it talks to young people about the meaning and purpose to life and finding your own purpose and gifts and talents. But it takes a focus on education. And so those are some of the programs that we have to offer. And then we also offer a lot of different resources. And so during the pandemic, we got a not so gentle nudge to go to a virtual platform. So we're able to offer any of our trainings virtually. And because of that, we've been able to expand into Australia and New Zealand and Mexico and Ireland and the UK and all these different places. But we're also able to offer some online meetings to help support people that are in recovery. And so we partnered with this place called In the Rooms. If you've never visited intherooms.com, I highly recommend it because they have video meetings for every fellowship or issue you can possibly imagine. They have Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. They have it for codependency, relationships, grief, trauma. They have men's groups, women's groups. We partnered with them and we're able to offer Wellbriety meetings. And so we do it Tuesdays and Thursdays. So check them out. If you ever want to learn more about Wellbriety and what a Wellbriety meeting looks like, you're welcome to join. And it's for everybody, no matter, what you're in recovery from, if you're a friend, family member, or ally. And then I'd also like to share about a couple of upcoming events that we have. So this September, I'm really proud to announce that we will be hosting our very first international Wellbriety All Addictions Recovery Gathering. So it'll be September 22nd through the 25th in Alberta, in Red Deer, Alberta. And so what we've done is that, we're really, really grateful for all the different fellowships. I know I am, the fellowship saved my dad's life and helped my family and helped me personally. But sometimes when you go to different meetings, you can only focus on one issue, whether that be alcohol or gambling or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of people who are experiencing challenges with more than one issue. And so they have to go to a lot of different meetings. What we're doing through these gatherings is we're bringing all the fellowships and multiple pathways to recovery together. And we have one vision and goal, and that's to allow people the opportunity to share their own experience, strength, and hope, but to be able to focus on healing and wellness as a whole, no matter what your issues are. And so we're bringing speakers from all the different fellowships, AA, NA, medication-assisted treatment, all these different pathways to recovery. And that's the goal, is we just want to focus on healing and wellness. So this will be our third, and we're very excited and invite everybody to join us. And then this will be an in-person gathering. And then we have also partnered with 3 other really amazing Indigenous organizations, Native Wellness Institute, the Native American Fatherhood and Families Association, and Native Dads Network. And what we're doing is we are offering this gathering called Healing Together. And so it's a national wellness and healing gathering. Our next one will be February 15th through 17th in Mesa, Arizona. And we're going to have some really great keynote speakers, workshops. We have fun and fellowship, and it's an in-person gathering, and we invite everybody to join us there as well. Some upcoming projects that I'd like to share with you all. We're developing a program called Well-Anon, and what that does is it offers a resource and a program for friends and family members of all addictions recovery. We are developing a Wellbriety life skills program. So a lot of times our young people, they grow up in some pretty dysfunctional families and communities, and what it's about for them is they're focused on survival, right? They don't get an opportunity to learn some of those very key life skills that they are going to need as adults. So we teach them about money management and how to change a tire and all these different things that they can utilize as adults. We are focusing on increasing our efforts for incarcerated individuals, especially our women and veterans in prisons. That's very, very important to us. We are focused on being able to make our programs more accessible. So we have our Medicine Wheel and 12 Steps program that has been translated for the deaf community and hard of hearing. And then we are also working on some Spanish translations of a lot of our books and literature. And we are creating what we call our Collegiate Recovery Starter Kit. So anybody who attends a college, university, tribal college that would like to get Wellbriety meetings going on their campus, we're offering a starter kit so that they get everything that they need to get groups going in their college. And so that's just a snapshot of some of the programs that we have available. And then these are some of the resources. If you haven't been there, please visit the wellbrietystore.org, where we have a lot of books and literature. We have a daily meditations with elders book. It's actually also available as a free app. You can download it on your phone. You can get it emailed. You can join our Facebook group and get it for free there. You can order the book. We have a book called The Red Road to Wellbriety, and it was actually modeled after the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but like instead of the doctor's opinion, we have the elder's opinion, and we incorporate the 12 steps, but we weave in some of that cultural knowledge. And so feel free to visit, because it has some really, really amazing books, literature, videos, and gifts that you can offer for people that are celebrating recovery milestones and things like that. We're very, very active on social media. And so here's our contact information. If anybody wants to reach out about training or learning more about our programs, we can always come to your community. We do virtual training still. You can engage in that. But we're very, very active on social media, especially on Facebook. And so we have a lot of different pages and groups where we, every month, for example, we do a theme. And so this month was focused on families in Wellbriety, healthy families. And so we post daily inspirational messages. We do giveaways. We post information about upcoming projects and programs. September, we will actually focus on, in conjunction with Recovery Month, it will be Wellbriety Month. And so we'll be highlighting some really positive recovery messaging and, people that want to share their stories. So connect with us through our social media. Feel free to reach out to us via email. Check out our website at whitebison.org. And definitely looking forward to connecting with a lot more of you. So that was just to give you a brief overview of the Wellbriety movement and some of the programs that we have to offer. And it was an honor to come here and share space with you all today.
Thank you so much, Kateri. And it was also an honor having you. I learned so much. I was taken aback by your presentation. I must say it really blew my mind. At one point, I did turn off my mic because my video, because there was a part of the video when the Indigenous persons were telling their stories and their trauma. It was a bit, difficult to watch, but learning and empowering nonetheless. So with that said, I have so much to ask you, but so little time. And you provided a wealth of information, particularly for persons who would definitely be interested in programs like this, like myself. And so what I first want to start with is, highlight some key things that you said about your program and things that, I feel is so important. And I really like that the program is balanced and holistic. It focuses, as you said, on whole person wellness. And from listening to you and watching the video and looking at the slides, you see that it's connected, as you kept repeating, to traditional values and natural laws. And of course, it includes all different types of nature, which I love nature myself. And because I have on a headset, you wouldn't hear the birds behind me. And I like the culturally based approach your program takes because it welcomes everyone. And that was one of the questions that I have in terms of, how can this translate to non-Indigenous people? Because I know the program has an Indigenous focal point, but can you tell me about other groups, other non-Indigenous groups that also need rehabilitation, recovery, that are suffering from intergenerational trauma? How can this program translate to these people?
Well, I think that as human beings, what we found is that we have a lot of the same challenges in our community. We all have experienced trauma of some kind. We have all probably know somebody who has had challenges with, alcohol or substance use. We all have, family members or loved ones that we know that need healing. And, we all have cultural backgrounds of ancestors who have also been exposed to trauma. And so we highlighted some of those, like Holocaust survivors and slavery and, the Japanese internment camps. And so, people from all walks of life can relate to this, the impact of intergenerational and historical trauma. Well, since these are universal human teachings, we can also all utilize these tools and messages and everything to promote healing in our community. And so I think that how it translates to anybody is that these are universal human teachings and they're for everybody. And so we have a lot of people, they might be married to an Indigenous person, or they might, have a kid with, or they might be a service provider, and a lot of their clients are. And so we train people, through this cultural lens and these teachings that we've been given but they're for everyone. And I think that they're easily translated to any individual. Do you want to, maybe work on your own personal healing and growth? Do you want to learn to change some of your thinking errors? Do you want to learn how to be a better parent? Do you want to learn how to help your community members? If so, then you're like me. And, we have the same vision. And so that's how I would explain that we can all benefit from these teachings, because we're all impacted by it. And that's why we need everybody to create this healing forest.
Okay, thank you so much, Kateri, for that. And the program is versatile. The program has so much value to it as to how people can use the program. And there was something you mentioned regarding the journey. You talked about that Wellbriety movement and, journeying across the US for 3 days carrying a sacred hoop, which is a symbol of the Wellbriety movement. And you mentioned that there was also a journey on the healing of men and children. And Voice of Men 360, they focus a lot of their programs and support around men. So I do want to ask you, do you have a peer-to-peer support group for men or a meeting for men?
So right now there are a lot of different Wellbriety meetings that are going on that specifically focus on men. We are actually in the process of getting a group of really wonderful men together that we are going to increase our efforts in our Wellbriety movement for men specifically. And so stay tuned for some announcements, because we definitely have some things in the works to specifically engage with and focus on, healing for men and people that identify. We are going to be offering not only like support groups and resources, we're going to do mini conferences. We're going to be increasing our efforts specifically for men who are incarcerated. And, we have a lot of work to do. But one of the things that we do every month during October, that we recognize it as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is that we bring awareness to this really amazing program in Canada called the Moose Hide Campaign. And so that Moose Hide Campaign, it's like a little patch of moose hide, and it's on a safety pin. And this actually young girl and her family started this effort. And what they do is they ask people, men, to make a commitment to be somebody in the community who refuses to engage in violence in any way and stands up against violence in their communities. It's a very, very powerful grassroots initiative. And so we have Moose Hide Campaign patches that we can send out to people, that we do that for free, that we really highly encourage that. And sometimes people like to make involve the community and to be able to state their commitment to be, violence and drug and alcohol free, and to stand up for their families and community members and our kids. And so they'll make a commitment in front of the whole community, and, they'll have some of our our women elders, our grandmas that will come and pin that moose hide patch on their shirts. And so whenever anybody sees that patch, they know that that person is a safe individual that they can reach out to. And so there's a lot more that we're going to be doing.
Excellent, Kateri. And I know when you began talking about the movement and this whole journey and the wiping of the tears, etc., and one of the things you mentioned was that this journey was to raise awareness of domestic violence against women and children. And you just mentioned Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So can you tell us more about, support for domestic violence victims and even help for perpetrators? And I'm also including men there, because part of my research agenda is domestic violence, but I'm also looking at men as not just as perpetrators, but also victims. So can you tell us more about that support?
Well, what I can say is that there are a lot of other programs that will specifically focus on domestic violence. But since we do provide these monthly themes, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we will be highlighting and giving a shout out to some of those organizations that do explicitly focus on that. But we do have some pretty cool resources that we are able to offer for free. We have like some patches, and we have a really cool video about women taking their power back, and some pretty cool things that we will feature during the month of October through our social media initiatives.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that, Kateri. And like I said, I was blown away by this program. I have so much of questions, but I know definitely in the interest of time, I have to sort of pick out some key ones. And you mentioned things like incarcerated persons, and I know this is part of the whole criminal justice system, which by no means Indigenous people are no stranger to. So one of the questions I was interested in is how does this program address things like policing and Indigenous people, where crime is concerned, where, being an offender is concerned, or as you mentioned, that re-entry process. So could you tell us about that?
So I would say that we are very focused on the solutions, right? And so what we are able to do is we are able to go into some facilities, and we are able to offer training, books, materials. We are able to bring in drums and different things like that we are able to offer. What we like to do is we like to find out information, especially from the warden, right? Because the warden is kind of the say-all, but we find out if they allow for peer-led programming within the facility. And so if they do, we are able to go into a facility and train some of the incarcerated individuals, staff, volunteers to implement several of our programs. And the ones that we feature are our medicine wheel and 12 steps. We have them for men and for women. So we're able to train them how to facilitate these groups inside the facility. We have our Mending Broken Hearts, and that's the piece that focuses on grief and trauma. We have our healthy parenting programs, so fatherhood or fathers of tradition or mothers of tradition. So we teach them about healthy parenting because a lot of them are parents and they didn't learn about healthy parenting from their own families. And then we have our Warrior Down Recovery Coach program that is about re-entry. And so what we've had some experience doing is going and offering some of these trainings for free. And we take the sacred hoop to that facility and we do a commitment ceremony. And what they make a commitment to do is if they go through these programs and we offer materials for free, that they make a commitment that when they get out, they go back to their community and they commit to help stop the flow of our people back into the jails and prisons. And so we're able to also train people from the surrounding communities so that when they get out, they have that supportive network to go back to help sustain those changes, right? To sustain their recovery, to get engaged in the community. Now, one of the things that we're also doing is we're looking at changing the language that is associated with incarcerated individuals. And so like, as an example, because language is very important in our culture, but as an example, there's this terminology where they say ex-convict, and they have to carry around this label for the rest of their lives. Well, what we're saying is, no, that's not right. They don't have to be ex-convicts for forever. So what they're able to do is, they go in, they serve their time, they do what they're supposed to do, and then they go back to the community. And we're encouraging people to have these welcome home ceremonies where they welcome the person back to their community and they give them a chance. They give them a new chance to prove themselves, but they have to do their part too. So they have to go be of service to the community, chop wood, bring groceries to an elder, do different things to be of service, get involved in these recovery meetings, share your experience, strength, and hope, your lived experience. But we are encouraging people to have like these feasts and these potlucks to welcome people home so that they have a place, and to do like a naming ceremony so they get a new name. They get to have a different, energy. And that's why we would do naming ceremonies is, they were for a purpose so that a person, if they knew what their name was, they knew what they were supposed to do. They had a purpose. And so those are some of the ways that we are helping to look at reducing recidivism and, putting systems in place to help with relapse prevention and, creating that connection to each other, not only inside of the facility, but when they come back home too.
Thank you so much, Kateri. And it's very interesting the way you described, this program being part of not just the reentry, but the rehabilitation process. And having said that, I'm particularly interested in terms of you or the program. Do you get government buy-in? And if not, why? Do you get government support, provincial support, funding, that kind of thing?
We have definitely had some government grants, and we have received grants through SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, a lot of other different federal agencies that we have been able to receive some really amazing grants from. We get foundation grants, and we get a lot of donations too. And so we're really, really grateful for that kind of support. What I will say is that, through personal experience, my hope is that all government agencies will get trained in the importance and value of taking a culturally based approach, because, we've really experienced some challenges with some of our programs. There is a difference between evidence-based and cultural evidence-based practices. And so what we found is that you cannot take a westernized evaluation model and use it to measure culturally based approaches. They don't have the right evaluation tools to be able to accurately and effectively, show the effectiveness of this approach. And so, my hope is that we will keep on having conversations about the need to be able to offer valid evaluation approaches and models, and that people would recognize that we don't need permission to use our culture to heal. We've been using our culture for hundreds of thousands of years, and it's worked for us. And but that it would be really nice and helpful and give people a lot more access if we could gain a little bit more support and be able to use some of the right evaluation tools and the right data collection.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. So I just want to ask you one question that you can briefly answer, the cost details of your program, if any, because I know you offer a lot. And I just want you to talk about that briefly, the cost details of your program.
Oh, sure. So we are able to come to a community and offer 3-day trainings typically. I would say that the cost would vary based on the number of participants, but that if you're interested in learning more about costs of the program, please feel free to reach out to us through our office at 719-548-1000 or email us at info@whitebison.org. And we're very happy to give you some quotes and more information about how to bring training directly to you. And then I would also like to just say that if you're interested in learning about some of these journeys that we went on, or be able to get some of the teachings, that we have a YouTube channel. And so please feel free to visit our YouTube channel, because we do have a lot of documentaries where we have created these documentaries about the various journeys we've taken. We have one called Silent No More, where we actually focus on issues of murdered and missing Indigenous women. And, you can get a lot of these materials at no cost to you, and, watch them, learn about some of these teachings, learn about some of these programs in more depth.
Thank you so much, Kateri, and it was lovely having you. I mean, time doesn't even permit us to really talk about a whole host of things that we can around this program, but nonetheless, very informative, very empowering. And before we close, I just want to mention to our audience that upcoming would be Lunch and Learn. It's about the Residential School System 101, where you would have documentary screenings, speakers, presenters, story time, craft activities, Jay and Gizmo, dances, etc. And the venue would be on The venue would be Namarind London Friendship Centre at 260 Caldron Street, London, Ontario. Part of Truth and Reconciliation Project, and it's supported by Canadian Heritage. So for more information, you can call 437-889-8329 or email info@voiceofmen360.org, as well as visit the website www.voiceofmen360. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, right? So just type in Voice of Men 360, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. So I'm your host, Dr. Camille Cummings, along with Steve and I'm from Voice of Men 360. You tuned in to our monthly webinar with our guest, Kateri Coyhis, and do have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for tuning in.